NASA's own data shows something about the moon that defies all logic. When Apollo astronauts deliberately crashed a spacecraft into its surface, it didn't thud. It rang, like a massive hollow bell for over an hour. Scientists couldn't explain it then, and they still can't now. So what are we really looking at? A natural satellite or an ancient alien artifact parked in Earth's orbit long before humans ever looked up? Let's go back to November the 20th, 1969. The Apollo 12 mission was a roaring success. After walking on the moon, astronauts Pete Conrad and Alan Bean were heading back to the command module. As a final experiment, they sent their used lunar module, the Intrepid, on a collision course. It was a planned impact designed to create a small artificial moonquake. The seismometers they'd just planted on the surface were waiting to measure the tremors to give scientists their first real look at the moon's deep structure. Now, the Intrepid hit the surface about 40 miles away with the force of a ton of TNT. And back in Houston, scientists were watching their instruments, expecting just such some quick tremor that would die out in minutes, just like it would here on Earth. But that's not what happened. The seismometers lit up, and the shockwave started to build. It actually grew for 8 minutes, and then the moon began to ring. And I don't mean that in a metaphorical sense. The entire thing resonated. It vibrated like a colossal gong, a sustained hum that went on for over an hour. Now, stunned mission scientists actually reported the moon rang like a bell. So NASA crashed part of Apollo 12 into the moon, and it rang like a colossal bell for over an hour. Scientists expected a quick tremor. Instead, they got a sustained hum they couldn't explain. Even Mission Control admitted the moon rang like a bell. Now look, NASA has an official explanation for this. They'll tell you that because the moon is so dry, rigid, and lacks the water that dampens seismic waves on Earth, it acts more like a solid tuning fork, a neat, tidy explanation to shut down all those uncomfortable questions. But for many researchers of UFOs and the unexplained, that explanation just doesn't quite fit. On Earth, even huge earthquakes fade away relatively fast. The moon's vibrations didn't just last longer, they were of a kind that baffled geologists. It was almost as if a massive hollow sphere had been struck, letting the energy ripple across its shell with nothing inside to absorb the shock. And this wasn't a one-off, by the way. NASA did the experiment again when Apollo's 13's booster was sent crashing into the moon. It hit the moon with the force of over 11 tons of TNT. This time, the moon rang for more than 3 hours. And this leads us to one of the most persistent conspiracy theories out there. A classified NASA experiment, supposedly codenamed Chapel Bell. Officially, these crashes were for seismic study, but the rumour suggests a completely different purpose. Were they just studying moonquakes? Or was this a secret government project deliberately striking the moon to confirm a terrifying suspicion that the hollow moon theory was actually true? That ringing bell was the first crack in the official story. But when you start digging into this a little bit more, you find that the moon is a collection of lunar anomalies. It's like this whole catalogue of impossible coincidences. So let's start with its density. Earth's average density is about 5.5 grams per cubic centimetre. The moon's, on the other hand, is just 3.34 grams per cubic centimetre. And this means that the moon is only about 60% as dense as Earth. Now, for a rocky body that size, that's strangely light, to be honest. The official explanation, again, points back to the giant impact hypothesis, this idea that the moon formed from the lighter crust materials of early Earth. But for many, many theorists, the physics of that chaotic explosion seem just a little too convenient. Does a random cosmic accident that neatly sorts materials to form a perfect satellite sound like a natural event to you? Because it doesn't really to me. The numbers just don't add up for a solid body. But if you imagine the moon as a vast hollow interior, Suddenly, the low-density problem disappears. And in 1962, before the Apollo missions, NASA scientist Dr. Gordon MacDonald stated that based on astronomical data, the interior of the moon seems more like a hollow sphere than a homogeneous sphere. Nobel-winning chemist Dr. Harold Urey even suggested the moon's low density might be explained by large cavities inside too. Then you've got the orbit. The moon's path is an almost perfect circle, right? Now, most moons have eccentric elliptical orbits, but ours is so stable, it's almost too perfect. It's as if it were placed there, not just captured by gravity as every other moon in the solar system. But then it gets weirder. The moon is tidally locked. We all know that. It rotates on its axis in the exact same time it takes to orbit the Earth. The result? Well, we always see the same face, don't we? Forever hiding its far side. The perfect strategy to conceal whatever might be on it. Maybe. Perhaps the most famous anomaly is the Great Coincidence. The Sun is about 400 times larger than the Moon, but it's also almost exactly 400 times farther away. This incredible cosmic alignment means that from Earth, the Sun and the Moon appear to be exactly the same size, giving us a perfect total solar eclipse. Now, the science writer Isaac Asimov called it the sheerest of coincidence. And our planet is the only one in the solar system that has this specific feature. So at what point does a coincidence become so improbable that it starts to look less like an accident and more like an extraterrestrial plan? The anomalies aren't just in the scientific data, by the way. They may actually be buried in our oldest myths and legends. So if the moon has been our constant companion for 4.5 billion years like we're told, shouldn't it be in every single creation story? According to some interpretations of ancient history, the moon actually isn't there. Now, all across the globe, you find consistent stories of a time before the moon was in the sky. The ancient Greeks wrote of the Proselens, who lived in Arcadia. The name literally means those who were before Selene, the goddess of the moon. Now, philosophers like Aristotle and historians like Plutarch mentioned the Arcadians, who claimed their ancestors lived when the night sky had no moon. Now, these aren't just isolated tales either. In southern Africa, Zulu mythology speaks of a time when the earth was shrouded in mist and the moon was brought here by two brothers sent from the heavens. A classic ancient alien theory. In Colombia, the Chibcha people's traditions also recall a time before the moon was in the heavens. Mainstream historians will tell you these are just symbolic fables. But what if they aren't stories? What if they are fading shared memories of the single most significant event in human history, the arrival of the moon? This suggests the wild idea that our moon isn't actually a 4.5 billion year old companion, by the way, but it's actually a relative newcomer. Ancient myths from Greece to Africa tell of a terrifying secret of a time before the moon. If they're true, our moon isn't actually natural, it's a newcomer. And that points to an ancient alien event, which leaves two terrifying questions. Who put it there and why? You might think the idea of an artificial moon is pure science fiction, but the spaceship moon theory was actually proposed by two respected scientists from the Soviet Academy of Science. In 1970, Michael Vassin and Alexander Sherbakov published an article titled, "Is the Moon the Creation of Alien Intelligence?" It actually appeared in Sputnik, which was a popular Soviet digest, and it sent shockwaves through the international community. Their hypothesis was breathtaking. They actually proposed the moon wasn't natural at all, but was a planetoid hollowed out by a super advanced intelligence. This spaceship moon, they argued, was placed in Earth's orbit. They claimed the evidence was all around us, we just weren't looking in the right places, such as the shallow depth of the moon's craters. Not impacts on a solid body, but meteors failing to get through an armoured hull. Now, the abundance of titanium, a metal prize for aerospace craft, the ringing, the sound of a vast metallic structure vibrating. Vassin and Sherbakov were connecting the dots they felt were part of a NASA cover-up at the time. Now, over the years, Their theory has been fueled by whispers from alleged insiders and whistleblowers, stories of strange signals and classified data. While the Apollo seismic data has been analysed for decades, revealing a complex interior, proponents of the hollow moon theory, they're still unconvinced. And it really makes you wonder, did Vassin and Sherbakov crack the code others actually missed? Was the space race really about planting flags? Or what is it actually a race to reach an ancient alien artifact before the other side could? Now let's look at where this whole conspiracy theory has led us. We have a celestial body that rings like a bell, a density so low it raises serious questions, a suspiciously perfect orbit, and ancient myths that seem to remember its arrival. We even have credentialed scientists who publicly proposed it's an artificial spacecraft. So what conclusion are you and I supposed to draw from this mountain of uncomfortable evidence? The hollow moon theory, as incredible as it sounds, is that the moon is not what they actually tell us it is. It's a construct, an artifact, a hollow worldlet, engineered with a purpose and placed in our sky, the ultimate unidentified object that's hiding in plain sight. So if the moon is artificial, what is its purpose? The possibilities are as vast as they are unnerving. Is it a dormant ark? A lifeboat for a lost civilization, perhaps, an observation post monitoring us, a terraforming device that stabilized our planet? Or is it something more ominous, a doomsday weapon? Or maybe, as Vassin and Sherbakov proposed, it's just a derelict, a ghost ship from a civilization so ancient we can't even imagine them floating in our sky like a silent tombstone. From this perspective, you realise the lunar anomalies aren't coincidences at all. They seem like features. The tidal lock isn't a fluke. It's a surveillance strategy hiding in the far side. The circular orbit isn't an accident, it's advanced navigation. The shallow craters aren't a quirk, they're proof of a reinforced hull, and the ringing isn't the sound of a rock, it's the resonance of metal. According to this theory, the moon isn't a dead world, it's a machine, a silent watcher. Now look, the official narrative is comfortable. It's a story of cosmic accidents and lucky gravity. But the breadcrumbs are all there if you're actually willing to follow the trail of unexplained phenomena. The ringing surface, the impossible orbit, and the ancient memories. For believers in this theory, the evidence for a NASA cover-up is just too big to ignore. They point to a story that's older, stranger, and infinitely more important. So in the end, you have to decide for yourself. Is the moon a rocking neighbour born from chaotic chance? Or is it actually a silent watcher, a product of intelligent design? And that brings us to the end of tonight's case. But here's the thing, the mystery doesn't end here. So what do you think? Is the moon just a natural satellite or the most ancient alien artifact hiding in plain sight? Drop your theories in the comments and I'll be featuring some of the best in future episodes. And if you enjoyed this investigation, make sure you hit subscribe or follow because this is just one file from the Dark Vault. The next mystery is already waiting, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. And for all of those of you listening on the podcast, thanks for joining us around the fire. Until next time, keep searching for the truth.